All right, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus podcast presented by BuffaloPlus.com. Mike Catalana, Dan Fates. I am Jenna Cottrell. The Bills now 2-0 after their 31-28 win over the Dolphins on Sunday. Josh Allen, quite a day at the office, 417 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, leading the Bills. He had quite the day. He also connected with Stefon Diggs for 8 catches. We're going to get into Josh's day, this receivers day, Brian Daboll's plan on offense, the defense, any guys that stood out as well, the expectations for this team. But, Mike, I want to start with just Allen and what he looked like to you and what really stood out to you about his day.
Well, what stood out was that the Bills have a modern NFL offense. It's a throw-first offense. They have a quarterback who completes passes. They throw it down the field. I mean, the numbers that Allen is putting up now are impressive for him, but they're all also highlighting the embarrassment that is the Bills' passing game over the last 2 decades, right? I mean, 400 yards is 400 yards, okay? Well, 400 yards is great, but you don't expect 400. But, I mean, come on. Legitimately had to go back to Kyle Orton for a regulation 300-yard game. And then, just the lack of passing and passing success that they've had. I was listening to the pregame radio show before the game, and a fan called in on WGR, and he's like, Allen had 300. I'd like to see him with a 400-yard game. And I honestly thought the hosts were going to laugh. Guys are like, okay, he got 300, he got 400. Shoot, if he didn't, falter a little in that third quarter, he could have had 5. I mean, they really have a legit passing game, and it's fun to welcome the Bills to the 21st century.
Yeah, it was a bad day. I think that was the only thing we kept saying was it was a bad day to be a Josh Allen hater. Because, look, everybody can have their opinion on him. And we talked about how last week both sides of the coin kind of got to be happy because Josh missed a couple of wide open guys, but he also threw for 300 yards. So the Josh Allen experience, as we're calling it, was, both people got what they wanted. But this week it was just a total and complete domination by a quarterback that looked like Pro Bowler. Like that was a Pro Bowl performance. That was the type of performance we've been asking for on this podcast, on Buffalo Plus. Bills fans have been asking for it. When the defense wasn't good, and they needed somebody to step up. It wasn't the defense that made a play. Yes, Jordan Poyer came up with a big play and sacked Ryan Fitzpatrick, but it was the offense that threw the counterpunch and then threw the knockout punch. That was what was most impressive, that this was an offense that finally picked up the defense and won a game. And that's not something that I have been able to say since, Josh Allen got here. It's always been winning games 17-13, and Trey White comes up with a pick late because they're holding on to, dear life. This was an offense that even when they were up 4 with 5 minutes to go and I thought they were just going to run out the clock, Josh Allen goes 47 yards on a deep ball to John Brown. It was, like Mike said, exciting to see a modern-day offense here in Buffalo. Because a lot of times we see them and we watch the other team and I go, man, that offense is a lot of fun. The Bills' offense is the fun offense.
And I thought, too, when you mentioned that touchdown to John Brown, I mean, at first when Josh dropped back, I was like, what is going on? Because I feel like a lot of times we've kind of seen, especially for the Bills, even you talk about in the playoff game last year, a little bit of conservative play calling. Let's kind of run out the clock, and that obviously can catch up. But the fact that they kept their foot on the gas, Brian Daboll kept putting the ball in Josh Allen's hands to make those throwing plays. Mike, how much trust do you think that shows that he has?
Tons of trust in Josh Allen. And I got to say it because this is an official Brian Daboll podcast here, but the guy's going to be a head coach.
As well, also.
Well, he's going to be a head coach. He's going to be. And you know what? My first thought is I was thinking to myself, okay, what he's done with Josh to this point. Now, it's only 2 games into this season. But obviously, he looks like he has progressed already from last year because they gave him weapons. Tells you how much trust that Allen has in him and how he has taken a guy who the expectations were pretty low on when he came into the league in terms of being a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
And certainly he's made him better than every other quarterback from that draft except Lamar, right?
Yeah.
right? Okay, so he's done that, and Lamar, because he's got an MVP, and is already that step ahead of him, but he's making progress. So I thought to myself, man, which team has a young quarterback and an awful head coach and a bad culture that could use him?
The Jets.
The Jets.
Yep.
If I'm the Jets, Brian Daboll is the adult in the room who has worked with Saban and has worked with Belichick and has worked his magic at the moment with Josh Allen. He's a guy I would start to target, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Daboll's still got a lot of work to do with Josh Allen this year, but the trust you talked about, Jenna, is obvious, especially in the plays that Dan was just talking about and you were talking about when you said, oh my God, what are they doing? Bang, he hits the big play to John Brown.
And it wasn't only the play to John Brown. It was after the Dolphins were really kind of getting going in the third quarter, and you started to see Fitz magic start to get rolling. And all of a sudden we went, oh, it's a 4-point game. And they marched down the field again, and they took the touchdown. And then the Bills, it was a touchback. They got the ball at the 25-yard line. They go play action, and they hit Diggs deep for 46 yards. Like, that was the immediate reaction of like, oh, like, that's what Aaron Rodgers does. That's what Tom Brady does. That's what Drew Brees does. That's what good quarterbacks do. They take the momentum back in one play, and that was what it was. I thought Brian Daboll should have gotten the head coaching job in Cleveland last year. If he doesn't get a head coaching job this year, he's at least going to get paid. Like, he's at least got to get a raise, and whether you want to throw an assistant coach label, like, Brian Daboll is doing a phenomenal job here in Buffalo that can't be overstated. And, Mike, I thought you said it best. Looking from where he came from, the dysfunctional offense that he was given and the progression that he has made, I think that's just as exciting as Josh Allen's progression is as to what Brian Daboll has been able to build. He's found roles for Isaiah McKenzie. You see Cole Beasley getting the action. You see Zach Mott. Like, he is just pressing all of the right buttons right now. And this is Team Brian Daboll podcast. So you're not going to hear a bad word from me, but it was just, again, beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. And I loved, excuse me, just the fact that Josh, we also saw him, like you said, connecting on those longer passes. He had multiple passes over 40 yards. And I feel like we talk about Josh as this big, strong-armed quarterback, but that deep ball is something that he has struggled with. And to see him connect consistently in a game, I mean, I feel like that, once again, just the toolbox continues to be full for this offense because they can execute everything.
Now, look, Vic Carucci asked him about it in the postgame from the Buffalo News. Are we done with the questions about the deep ball? And Josh gave him a little snarky answer and said, what do you think? But there was a reason there were questions about the deep ball because he threw a lousy deep ball. I mean, let's be honest. He couldn't connect on him. Mm-hmm. And then it started to come around. And the funny thing was he got so much better at the intermediate throws. I mean, he still occasionally sails one, and he did have the terrible read and bad throw that Kyle Van Noy nearly had for an interception, maybe a pick six. But he's gotten so much better at those throws and this patience. I mean, the one he threw that Gabe Davis caught was good patience, moving to his right. He waited. He zipped it in there. Davis made a great catch. All those things are good. But he had thrown lousy deep passes. And then this year, last week, he didn't really throw any. But then he hit him. I mean, he hit him. He hit, and even the one to Beasley, Dan, wasn't a deep, deep ball, but it was a shot play.
Well, it's not only that. It's not the fact that it's a deep play. We know he can throw the ball 75-plus yards with a fastball. It's having that touch. That's what I've been most impressed on. These crossing routes with Diggs and Beasley, they're thrown in a place where only his receiver can catch it. He's shielding the receiver is shielding the defender, and we talk about analogies all the time. Last podcast, it's easier to fix a hook than a slice. It's a great one. I think this one, I've heard it talk about with baseball pitchers. It's not only being able to throw a fastball or being able to throw a changeup. It's then being able to throw a changeup on the outside corner and then the inside corner and then low and to be able to place it. And Josh has never really had the touch. It was the swing passes when he was coming out of Wyoming. He was throwing them too hard. Even receivers have been like, it's like break your finger if you're not paying attention. He's throwing so much more catchable balls that it is incredible to see the progression in just one offseason. So that's what's been really impressive to me. It's the touch. It's not just lasers because we know we can throw it between three defenders. It's the accuracy, it's the touch, it's the feel that I never thought he really had. And I didn't know if he was ever going to get, because I didn't know if that was something you could really work on.
Yeah, I could not agree more. You say touch, and it's completely true. I also think we have to give credit to the Bills receivers. Stefon Diggs, I know the Bills traded for him. And Mike, you said that the Bills did not give up enough, because the plays that Stefon Diggs makes, the ball, he catches anything within his radius, but then also like the physicality of some of his catches as well. He's putting his body on the line. I knew he was a number one wide receiver talent coming in here, but Mike, he has certainly proved to be that, and then some, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, look, I joked that I said Bean didn't give up enough for him, because he did give up a number one pick, and anytime you give up a one, it's a big deal. But he got a guy in his prime who has talent, wants to be a one, and has a chip on his shoulder. Late draft pick, he's that guy, right? He's always that guy. And look, it's early, it's 2 games in, but Kirk Cousins is really struggling. And I know Kirk Cousins is a guy that everybody loves to pick on, but he's had a better passing career. Well, right. That's what I'm saying is he's had a better passing career than Josh Allen, right? Okay. Yeah. But now you take Stefon Diggs away from him and you put him over to Josh Allen, and it just helps. And look, it's 2 games in, but I mean, Cousins really misses the guy. But I love the way he plays too. And I'm glad to see that he appears to be great teammate, great in the room, spreading out the credit. And if you look at that game, right, the plays that everybody made, I mean, Beasley with a big play over the middle, John Brown with his deep ball, and Diggs catching everything is sort of the way you would draw it up, right? So for Brandon Beane, I mean, he signed the other 2 guys as free agents, made the trade to get the number 1 guy, and then he drafted Gabe Davis. And I know it's early, but rookies don't normally have the presence of mind to get their hand under that in such a key moment. I mean, that to me was the thing on that catch, that he ended up getting his hands under that, which easily could have been a ball pinned on the ground. So it was a good week for Brandon Beane, in addition to Brian Daboll and Josh Allen.
I just think too, you mentioned Gabriel Davis and that catch. Like, this was his second NFL game. He's a 4th round pick. And, we got to ask him post game just about what he was saying, what was going through his head, what was the reaction of his teammates. And he just spoke about how, like, he knows he's capable of making those plays and he was happy to do it. But the kind of confidence that takes, I feel like, to come into a brand new system, an NFL team without an off season. Dan, I mean, it is early, so I don't want to overlook something, but that to you has to stand out.
Well, it's the entire locker room. And I know that's a very Sean McDermott answer that I just gave to your question, where you asked Sean about, like, so how's Gabe Davis looking? He's like, well, all of the receivers are doing a good job. And you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. But not only what Gabe Davis had to say, but, there's an article we posted on BuffaloPlus.com and on the YouTube channel, but, like, the reaction of Josh's teammates to his game. And I think that was one of the cool things we saw even before Josh Allen started his Zoom call. It was up, but he was muted, and Micah Hyde walked into the room, and it was like a dog seeing his owner for the first time after like a week away, where he was just like so excited, and he was like, and then you talk to Micah, and you realize that he's like, and you say 417 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and he's like, geez, like, are you kidding me? That's what Josh did. I knew he had a good game, and everybody was just blown away. It's just kind of that feeling right now. And I think we've talked about it before. Micah Hyde said previous years that it's been frustrating on offense, that it's just been, it's kind of worn on them. The fact that they play good and then the offense doesn't play well. So it was really kind of cool to start to see that snowball effect kind of rolling in this locker room, because we talked about the expectations before the season. Now they're real. Like they were just, a thought before. Now they're even more real. So what this locker room is, and Josh won't say it, but to get this 300-yard game, to get this 400-yard game, to be averaging 30 points through 3 games. Yes, it was the Dolphins and it was the Jets, and they're 4-0. And the next opponents that the Bills got to play, they're 7-0. So, like, you're going to start to see some real things, but you really can't draw up a better 2 weeks if you're a Bills fan or if you're Sean McDermott, and especially injuries. Like looking around the league, I thought the Bills were unlucky after week 1 without Feliciano, and then you had Milano and Edmonds go down, and then Josh Norman was on IR. At least none of them are season ending right now. Like guys were dropping like flies yesterday. So again, I think the Bills are in a really good place.
No, I mean, I agree. But I think, Mike, for Bills fans, how do you balance those expectations? Because like it was the Jets and it was the Dolphins. So where do we put our expectations level after that?
Here's what you do. There are 2 games you should have won, and they did win. The reason there's even more excitement, because they were 2-0 last year. They had to come back, and they won the second game, and they won both down in Jersey. But this is different because your quarterback has taken a step. And I think that's what you hang your hat on right now, is that Josh dominated these 2 games. So that gives you hope, because as Dan's talked about, you got to step it up offensively against these better teams. Yeah. But we've talked a lot about raising the bar for Josh constantly. Okay, Josh, now you just dominated 2 teams that you're better than. So the next question is, and I think if Bills fans are being fair to themselves, they start to say, how are we going to do against the good teams?
Yeah.
And you've got the Rams. And, I watched Cam Newton. He looked good. And the Seahawks are good. And you've got them. And you got Mahomes. And you got Balder. I mean, you've got, like, a schedule. So what do I say as a Bills fan? I would say to a Bills fan, be excited. You're 2-0 and your quarterback looks great. But also realize, and I think most of them do, you didn't play the highest of competition. So can Josh and the rest of the team ramp it up against the better teams? I think they're capable of it. It won't go that way every week. I'm not expecting 16-0, but I would say that they do right now look like one of the better teams in the league. I just want to see them, and we're all excited to see them, especially starting Sunday against a Rams team that's off to a great start.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think, that they're 2 weeks into the season, and if you would have said, back in August that they were going to be 2-0, averaging 30 points per game, Josh would be in the MVP conversation, and Daboll would be lining up to, maybe the hottest coach besides Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City, like they would run to take that. Like they would go through 16 – Bills fans would go through so many tables to get that, on fire or not. Like that – so, like, yeah, there is excitement. I mean, you do have to be – Josh was on First Take this morning, and I thought it was just interesting to see a Bills quarterback be on a national morning talk show. Like, it was just crazy to be like, yeah, and Josh even said, like, yeah, we're in Buffalo, like, we're building something here, and said all the right things. But just the fact that, they talked to – Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers, like, and for it to be Josh Allen was exciting. Like the Bills, they used to be like that cute, underdog kind of thing. That's out the window. Like they are now national attention for what Josh is doing.
Yeah.
And that's what you needed to get to that next level, Mike. We've always talked about it. If the Bills want to be that good, then the quarterback needs to play that good, right?
And I'm not even joking about this, but part of what gets you in those national conversations, especially with fans, is fantasy football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Bills have legitimate players. Like when you look on the Bills list, you know how you look down and you say, what percentage, every once in a while you draft a Bills player and it says, 8% of the league has this guy on a roster. 0.1% start them. Like, I mean, okay, they've just had some bad players, Kelvin Benjamin, on the roster. But now you start looking and you go, wait a minute. Allen, Diggs, like, are you kidding me? John Brown's putting up points every week. And the reason I say that is that's a big part of watching football around the league, right?
Well, I think too, like, I feel like a couple years ago, if you were to ask, like, oh, who's the Bills head coach? Who's the Bills number 1 wide receiver? Like, nationally speaking, I don't think a lot of people would know that. But now you could be, oh, Josh Allen. There's obviously Stefon Diggs. A lot of people talk about Devin Singletary. Those Sean McDermott. Like, now there's the national conversation that does include the Bills, which is something that, hey, they have expectations. We knew that coming into this season. They have performed in week 1 and week 2. How do they continue to do that? And I have to wonder, just in terms of, they did give up 28 points to the Dolphins. From the defensive standpoint, I thought there were a lot of issues. I thought Levi Wallace got picked on quite a bit, but Tyrell Dodson coming in, he's a guy that's been on the practice squad. Mike, what did you see from him? Because I was impressed. The fact that you had Tremaine Edmonds not in the lineup and he was able to make plays.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he had one series where I think he made the play on every play. He was at least around the ball, if not making it. He's got the responsibility of the calls. And the other thing is there's one thing of replacing Tremaine Edmonds in a game. There's another of replacing Tremaine Edmonds and not having Matt Milano next to you, right? So both of them are out. So, Gesicki, the tight end from the Dolphins, made life miserable for the Bills. Yeah. I mean, there were moments there, right? Trey White got burned on an early pass, and then the TV broadcast went out, and, we picked it up, a little later in the day. But, there were issues on the defense. Wow. We're talking about issues on the defense and a dominant offense. Are we still doing a Bills podcast? Is this still the Bills that we're doing here? So, yeah, but I would say to be worried, and I would say be worried in this case against the Rams, because you're going to see a team. I think McVay sort of has gotten his, God, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it. He's gotten his little mojo back. He's confident again in his play calling because, last year they just sort of, they didn't have their running game and there were things. Yep. And now he's got Goff. Goff is sort of a system guy, but man, he can pick you apart. He did it against Dallas and he did it even more so against the Eagles. He had them guessing, and that's a step up, obviously. Fitz is Fitz, but that's a step up, which they're going to face on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think –
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jenna.
No, just especially the connection Goff has with Higbee, the tight end. I mean, they had 3 touchdowns yesterday. Yeah. I mean, that is something that's obviously been a concern. And like you said, the fact that the Dolphins were pretty able to easily move the ball down the field with Gesicki. It's definitely something that it catches your attention for sure.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, that's a concern. And Mike, we had our recap of the game yesterday on Buffalo Plus and on our YouTube channel. What was the negative? Levi Wallace got picked on, and I don't think. I mean, it was a who cares touchdown. It was a very important touchdown to anybody that had the Bills -5.5. That was a very Ryan Fitzmagic cover if I've ever seen one. But I don't think giving up 28 points is anything you really want to hang your head on, even if you're without 2 linebackers. I think that more in, Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier are going to have to, find more solutions than Brian Daboll. And that being said, that's not to say that, this is a cat and mouse league. So teams are now going to see what Josh Allen has done these first weeks. Yep. Because you know what? He didn't run nearly as much as I thought. I thought he was going to run way more against Miami than he did, which was cool to see because he's a quarterback. So you're going to have to beat teams with your arm. And that was it. Now, he did, the internet loves it when he pile drives Kyle Van Noy into the ground, and he was asked about it after the game when he was running, and he was like, it was kind of stupid. I want to ask McDermott what he thinks of when he sees, with how good he's playing, even more than ever, slide. John Feliciano even tweeted it when he ran the first time for 16 yards, and then he slid. And John Feliciano, who's watching the game at home, tweets, he slid. My dude slid. And it's that was perfect because you have to see that. So, again, now that there's more film, there's 2 weeks of film now of what Brian Daboll's new system is, what this offense with this new wide receiving core is doing. You are now – Daboll's going to have to drop some new things, and Josh is going to have to understand that teams – you're going to have to deal with Jalen Ramsey this week. You're going to have to deal with Aaron Donald. Screen game is going to be more important. It is definitely going to be a step up in weight class this week. Yeah, definitely. Also, if people are not following John Feliciano on Twitter, highly recommend because he is a hilarious character. We want to do the Bills picks. We were all 2-0 after, of course, the last week. Mike, we'll start with you. What's your pick for this week?
This is a tough one. It's a tough spot, too. They're getting a ton of love. Normally, obviously, they'd be coming home. Imagine what Ralph would be like Sunday with the 2-0 Rams coming in. I don't know if it impacts the Rams in terms of them traveling east, and then I think they're going back and then coming back again. Yeah, because I think San Francisco was going to plan on staying in staying in the east, going somewhere south and then coming back. They're staying at Greenbrier. Yeah, that's an odd way to do it, but that's what they're doing. I think that's tough. I just don't want to go off the bandwagon at the moment, but I think it's going to be a tough game. And I kind of think it's going to be a higher scoring game. So I'm going to take the Bills, and I'm going to say 30-27. High scoring game. That's not a typical Bills game, even though we just saw 30-28, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to take them 30-27 Bills. I'm not going to change my mind during the week, but I could easily be picking the same score for the Rams to win the game. I think these teams are both off to a great start, but I'm going to stick with the Bills in this one, 30-27.
Okay.
Yeah, we're recording this podcast on Monday because we really wanted it to be for you listeners to get the reaction of what the game was. So that was the reason why. So it's really tough now to pick this game, and I think, Mike, I think you're kind of going the same thing. To me, it depends if Milano and Edmonds play. I think that's huge. I think what we find out on Wednesday and who we see in a red jersey, even without it, I still am worried about Milano's hamstring having to cover people. I think even with a week out, I think that's, we saw Byron Jones trying to play, for corner for Miami. He tried to give it a go and then went one possession and was out. So that is a concern. I think I'm leaning Rams here. I just think that what they have going on offense is challenging, and what Jalen Ramsey can do. I think they shut down a really good Cowboys offense in week one, kind of stymied the Eagles last week. The back and forth travel does worry me a little bit. Something like 28-24, the Rams is kind of what I got. I think it's a one possession game. The Bills are 3-point favorites right now, which I think a lot of people were surprised about because I don't know how much neutral field is. These are technically neutral fields, so technically that they're saying that the Bills are 3 points better. So it's an interesting line.
I think it's a lack of travel is really the advantage, right? They're back at home, and the Rams got to come back east again. I think that's the negative.
I'll take the Rams one possession game, something like that. If Milano and Edmonds are in, I can see the Bills, maybe flipping that, going, 28-24 Bills.
Yeah. Okay. I think this is definitely, let's be real. This is the hardest game that we've had to pick so far this season. And especially since we are doing this on Monday, I'm going to stay with the Bills though. I think after the performance that we've seen, I do think the travel for the Rams is just a lot. Back-to-back West Coast trip or East Coast trips from the West Coast. That's just a lot, So I think that this Bills team will continue to grow, continue to build that offense. So I'm going to pick a very close game as well. 30. Is that crazy if I pick 31-28 after they just won 31-28? But we'll go with that. Something close.
You're crazy.
A lot of points I'm expecting. But yeah, I do think that this Bills team will have the edge, and I think it really does start with that travel.
Yeah, so, the return of Robert Woods.
Are these official picks? Because we do our Let's Talk Football live show on Thursday. I feel like those have to be the official picks. The listeners have to tune in to Let's Talk Football live on Thursday on the 13 Win Facebook page and on Twitter live for the official plays.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. The early.
Okay.
The early ones.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to note before we wrap things up?
I just started to say it's the return of Robert Woods to Orchard Park. One of those guys under the radar, former Bills player. He's been outstanding. He just got paid. Didn't have a huge game yesterday or Sunday against the Eagles. He did run one in. The Rams use a lot of other plays with the wide receivers, creative use of Kupp and Woods. Really a solid offense to see. But Robert Woods was a good guy, overshadowed by Sammy Watkins, but I think he's actually had better last few years other than that whole Super Bowl thing that Sammy got. So it'll be interesting to see how he matches up against the Bills Sunday too.
I think it's a great point, Mike, because when Sean McVay has this offense clicking, it's a lot of confusion. It's a lot of misdirection. It's a lot of pre-snap motion so that the defense shows their hand, and then all of a sudden they do something else. So that's why it's even more important. Tyrell Dodson was actually calling the plays in the huddle. Like, he's making the checks at the line. It's going to be huge to have Edmonds back in there just to be that quarterback on a very complicated offense to handle.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to check out buffaloplus.com as well as the Buffalo Plus YouTube page. We appreciate, as always, you listening. For Mike Catalana and Dan Fates, I'm Jenna Cottrell. We'll see you next time.